See you soon. Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Brand Times Performance webinar. It's super exciting to have so many of you here. I think we had about 700 people register, so we're excited and pumped to dive in. We're going to kick off with a few introductions before we dive into everything. I'll hand to George, and then Carly can share a little bit about herself. So I'm Michaela. I'm head of marketing here at Tracksuit. I joined as employee number 3 about 3.5 years ago, and at the start, we're working with about 5 to 10 great customers, and now we work with over 1,000 marketers across several different markets. And the core of what we're going to discuss today are the same conversations that are felt by so many of us in this world. I spent over, I would say, a decade deep in the world of brand, first in B2C and now B2B. Started off in beer, moved to beauty, and now B2B SaaS. At the same time, I also sit on the board of another high growth company called Aglow, and that offers me the perspective of both sides of the table and how we make sure that this conversation flows through all layers of the org. Outside of that, I'm actually calling in from New York. So I moved here about 6 months ago. Spent a bunch of time frequenting restaurants, visiting cat cafes, and just genuinely navigating living in a new city. That is me. Handing over to you, George. Yes, Maddie.
Amazing. Thanks, Michaela. I'm taking myself off mute. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
good.
perfect. I'm George, co-founder and CEO of MagicBrief. We're a startup based in Sydney, Australia, helping teams around the world work out which ad to make next. We're used by thousands of teams, whether they're a Shopify store that's just opened or a global consumer powerhouse. We help teams decide what ad to make next. Previously, I was the creative director at Eucalyptus, where I led brand development and marketing across the portfolio of brands. And before that, I was a creative at Whiting Kennedy in London, Colenso BBDO in Auckland, and Johannes Leonardo in New York. So I started out my original origin days of advertising and brand marketing. So I have that perspective in terms of how the both worlds kind of collide and compound if you get everything right.
Nice. Thanks, George. Over to you, Carly. I know we'll go a bit deeper in your Q&A, but you're going to share a few pieces about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Carly. I'm the head of growth at Eucalyptus. I've been here for about 4.5 years. My background is definitely in performance marketing. So came here as a media buyer and over time have really kind of grown into leading our growth teams and growth function. So definitely a very big performance marketer girl at heart in terms of both buying and creative and all of that. But we have a pretty unique system here at Eucalyptus where we manage a house of telehealth brands with our overall goal of making good health last a lifetime. So we are really focused on kind of growing those telehealth brands here in Australia, now actually globally as well. And so my responsibility is to really pull together performance and brand and really kind of make all of these brands have the biggest impact that they possibly can on our patients' lives worldwide.
Fantastic. Perfect person to have on the call. So a quick agenda before we dive into everything we want to share tonight. First and foremost, we've got 3 core sections that we are very excited to get into. Firstly, Tracksuit and MagicBrief's view on how to actually nail this perfect balance. So understanding, hopefully at a masterclass level, how do we make sure that we're doing both in the right way? As we know, it is never the long versus the short, and that is absolutely a false dichotomy. Secondly, we've got a Q&A with Euc's head of growth, Carly, who just introduced herself. And we really want to dive into how do you run a best-in-class growth function. As I said earlier, we do work with thousands of marketers, and Carly is absolutely one of the very best that we've seen around the world. So massive privilege to have her on here tonight. And finally, we'll round up with a Q&A. So we'll open the floor up, and if anybody has additional questions that we want to go deeper on, we'll use that time to jump in. Cool. Lovely. So I want to start here and I want to open this conversation with a very shared belief that brand growth equals business growth. Now, we know from research that brand building is marketers' #1 priority for 2025, but sadly, it is not even in finance's top 5. Scarier yet, we think about 42% of finance leaders really struggle to understand how to actually measure the long-term impact of brand building. And that is something that we're hoping to change with this conversation and all of the hundreds of people on this call today. But at the core of today's conversation is the philosophy that we imagine we share with everybody in this virtual room, which is that brand growth does equal business growth. So I want to speak to that evidence. Now, the commercial value of brand has actually been proven over and over again with so many studies out in the world. But here's a snapshot of one of the best longitudinal pieces of data that I've ever seen on the market. It's something I've used internally. It is something that I give to our customers. It is something that I share with any of my friends in marketing and advertising. Now, this is actually Kantar's Brand Z Index study, and you know that if I am putting a competitor's data set in this slide deck, then it is a damn good piece of data. And I want to just zoom in a little bit here. Maddie, if you can, could you just zoom in on the visual? So what this study actually does is they've been tracking the financial performance of companies since the early 2000s and then ranking them based on the strength of their brand equity. So this data set shows a really strong correlation between both brand strength and business performance. And to go deeper for a second and just walk you through those trend lines, what they found is that companies with strong brands consistently outperform the S&P 500. And we can see that in that orange trend line, with the yellow trend line being the S&P 500. Now that deep blue one, and better yet, is that the top tier brands perform more than 2 times better than the S&P 500 and are far more resilient in downturns within the market. So in really simple terms, how does brand marketing actually add commercial value in the context of revenue? So these 3 key elements, and these 3 elements, please take a screenshot. This is the core part or the anchor of how I feel like we can compel and drive conviction in the world of brand, because these 3 elements actually allow us to talk about brand value in the context of revenue and the balance sheet so that they do align with existing goals of CFOs and boards. So I'm going to articulate each of these 3 in terms of what I'm actually talking about. So first and foremost, customer acquisition becomes far easier. So we know that strong brands reduce friction in the buyer journey. Familiar, trusted brands convert so much faster and cheaper. And this means that we don't have to over-rely on aggressive discounting or conversion marketing. This, of course, helps optimize the CAC to LTV ratio, which is a core unit economic that'll be found in any good board pack. Secondly, more value being realized over time. So strong brands do allow for premium pricing and repeat business. They're actually able to grow LTV and build trust and connection. Now, where this matters in terms of that conversation is this does impact revenue quality, and it also improves margins over time. And then finally, brand and community becoming the moat. I think this is the single most important piece for every marketer over the next 5 years, because in a crowded, volatile marketplace, which we have probably all experienced at some point in our career, brands do act as a protective moat. And again, we can see that in that previous data set. So it builds a very loyal customer base and active community, and that is really, really hard to replicate. I always say brand is how people think and feel about you, or how they talk about you when you're not in the room. You can replicate, given the right resource, a product or a service. It is really hard to replicate how people talk about you when you're not in the room, regardless if you're a human, a product, or a service. So this, of course, insulates the business against those market downturns, and then is able to create long-term enterprise value. So all of that said, with those 3 elements, it means that brand equity isn't just a marketing nice to have, it is a strategic asset that drives commercial growth. Now, one of the most important slides I want to share today, those who do win with marketing stakeholders and non-marketing stakeholders on the case for brand are those who are able to set up that conversation initially around brand growth equals business growth, but also who have the ability to be able to articulate the concept of future demand. I would say if you've been in the world of Tracksuit, this won't be a new term for you. It is something that one of our co-founders coined several years ago, James Herman, and it's pretty self-explanatory, which is by design. And that is that marketing or marketers have 2 jobs: harvest the existing demand in the short term with conversion marketing activity, usually around 5 to 15% of the market, and then 2, build future demand for the brand among people who aren't ready to buy just yet, but who will enter the category at a later stage. Now, this group of people is so much bigger. It is usually 85 to 95%. But what is really, really key is that both of these jobs are equally important. And then we find as brand leaders, when we are speaking to most CFOs and finance leaders, it is so much easier to get buy-in for brand when we are labeling it as the creation of future demand. Cool. So how do we actually measure both of those? This is a really important piece around understanding both different types of demand, existing and future, do require different forms of measurement. So to measure existing, those on the left are what we need to look to for short-term return on investment metrics. And then to measure future demand, we really want to start looking at those long-term return on investment metrics, which will be found in any of your Tracksuit dashboards for all of our customers who are on the call today. What I want to make super clear is that both of these are multipliers of each other. So the return on existing demand next year will be heavily impacted on how well we build the brand this year. And here is a tangible example. It's all good and well throwing a bunch of theory at you, but without that tangible example, I think it's really hard to anchor the combo. So we want to show why brand matters to your bottom line, and we're going to use an example of a brand that most of us will know on this call, Nike. So Nike is, of course, very well known for some of the most innovative brand marketing in the market. Just do it, find your greatness, seen it all. However, what we actually found is that their profits and their revenue have been down 10% year on year, and their stocks have taken a massive stumble. I think in June last year, their stock value fell 21%, and that is a material impact. And these are results we're actually seen after years of their ex-CEO and leadership over-investing in conversion marketing and not putting enough resource behind what Nike is best known for, which is brand. And of course, this includes so much more than just your emotional campaigns. It is retail partnerships, it's collaborations, and all the other brand building activity that made the magic of Nike. Essentially, they were just putting too many dollars into serving existing demand and not enough into creating future, which is exactly why getting the balance right between the two is so critical. A fun part of this, just to actually overlay what that means in the world of Tracksuit, is our dashboard shows that this lines up. So with our data reflecting, and Maddie, maybe you could just zoom in a little bit on this as well, on those metrics. But our data reflects the fact that consumers have been pulling away from Nike as a brand. So looking here at the Tracksuit dashboard, we pulled this from April 24th to September 24th of last year. And we can see that their awareness has decreased 1%, consideration decreased 6%, and then preference, which if you're a marketer, you know that is the hardest metric to shift, has decreased a massive 6% as well. So what does that actually mean in human terms? It means that 5.7 million people less now consider buying Nike. Matt, if you jump to the next screen, we can see that. Perfect. And so 8 million people are now less preferring Nike to its competitors. So while Nike is still absolutely a market leader and is a huge incumbent within the category, it has allowed for other brands like Hoka, On, Adidas to really eat into their lunch. And I think it's a perfect real world example of what happens when we do stray away and we don't get that balance quite right. So it's a very tangible example, but fortunately, they have vocally committed to investing much more in brand this year. And I think we can see that already with some of the work that they did at the Super Bowl. That was their first ad in years. So we'll keep tracking this dashboard and we'll be able to share what this looks like over the coming year. And this final piece here, before I hand over to George, here's a data-driven example which provides yet more evidence for that link between brand health and business metrics. So we ran a recent study with TikTok called the Awareness Advantage to understand the correlation between both brand and performance. And what we actually found, or the hero finding of that study, is that high awareness brands have nearly 3 times as many lower funnel conversions than brands with low brand awareness. So in other words, brand building improves the performance of your performance marketing. So I want to end on this final line, and that is, of course, that it should be brand and performance, not or. With that, handing over to my wonderful friend George to talk us through.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michaela. Something I want to start my section with is that viewing brand and performance as 2 separate channels or formats itself is an outdated view of marketing, in the sense that some people position brand as storytelling and performance as non-storytelling. But in reality, storytelling is instrumental to the performance. I think this misconception stems from a time where performance was viewed as bottom of funnel conversion marketing, because so much of performance marketing or digital marketing was things like banner ads, or it was DCO ads, just like the last time you saw a picture of the bag before you bought it. But now when you think of performance marketing today and what it's become in short form video and storytelling, it's such an amazing way to tell a story at scale to exactly the right people. And I think there's examples now of how you really can build this amazing feedback loop, scale your brand faster than ever, but also get through and cut through with the actual story of why the brand was started, why you sell the products that you do, and kind of what you have available as a company. When you think about like the relationship that content creators have made with their audiences today that are so real, and those have been primarily driven by short form video content. So it really does show, if you get this right as a brand, there's so much that you can take away from this new format. And for the next generations, it really is becoming like the way that they find an affinity to a brand or a content creator, or like anything it may be, even a politician. Like this is the way that they kind of resonate, and the way that they kind of receive content and react with it. So we see this to be something is really exciting. And also when performance marketing is used hand in hand with brand, like there's such powerful outcomes in terms of how you can really get these compounding results that I go through in these slides. When it comes to like viewing performance marketing as quick wins, like I want to debunk that in terms of some of the things that I can show in the slides. It's a common myth that looks more at performance marketing, kind of like that last mile, bottom of funnel conversion event. But the things that you can do with performance marketing when you get it right, when I look at these kind of three sections that are on screen right now, for one, it's the speed in terms of rapidly testing content, getting things out, testing concepts, messaging, new product lines, whatever it may be. There's also relevance, like partly because of the speed, you can get things into market, you can show the world, whether that's like a cultural event that's just happened and you can jump on that within a matter of minutes and really be the eye of the cultural storm. That is something that you can do with relevance, and something that we've seen so many amazing examples with over the last few years. The other thing is efficiency as well. And I think like when you look at Meta, for example, and their targeting sophistication and how much that has developed, leveraging 20 years of consumer behavior. I mean, it's so powerful now that people view performance marketing or Meta, and they see it to be, well, they must be listening through our microphones in terms of they've got such a good idea of exactly what to show us. And I think examples of that, right? Like you would know, or Meta would know, that to show someone an ad for a pair of trainers because they ran the marathon same time last year. And like that level of efficiency is so hard to achieve anywhere else. So it really is kind of like something that you can really exploit for the better through performance marketing. There's also a ton of examples over the last few years of these digital native performance brands that have really scaled, and they've built like amazing audiences and amazing following. Whether that's like High Smile here in Australia, Gymshark in the UK, or even Wild, a deodorant brand that's recently rapidly scaled and was acquired by Unilever. And Unilever themselves, as part of the acquisition, said that one of the things that they were most impressed by was the fact that it was this social first digitally native brand that's just taken over the market. So it's amazing to see whether it's like you're targeting the right persona in a political campaign, or you're selling non-toxic deodorant. Like you really can use this targeting sophistication to get ahead of your industry and really take market share in a meaningful way. I think we're also going to see like a ton of these digital native brands that scale and get in front of the right audiences over the next few years in terms of the way that they're built. And I think being able to go exactly to the right demographic, if people care about the product that you're selling, why you're selling it, why you started the brand in the first place, and being able to have that kind of really native and authentic relationship with a customer through these channels is going to be something that we're going to see people continue to double down on. I think also there's a view that performance marketing is just this immediate quick win, return on investment. But one of the things that I want to show, and we've got some slides here that show good examples of this, is not only do you get that kind of immediate impact if performance marketing is done well, where you get the result or get the conversion, but you can actually build this kind of consistent machine. And that was one of the things that we focused on so much at Eucalyptus, is like, how do you build this muscle or this machine where you can continually test messaging, get it in front of the right people, see what was resonating with that audience, and then double down on winners as you go. And I think if you can really build that muscle as an organization and you can scale those things up into brand marketing as well, you really start to see what a marketing function can be when brand marketing and performance go hand in hand. These are two examples, screenshots of the MagicBrief interface. On the left-hand side, we can see we're testing which messaging works the best, and we actually generate these reports now with AI on why an ad is working, improvements that could be made. We have recommendations on things that you could try or messages that you could change, maybe a different content creator to try. On the right-hand side here, we can see we're testing 4 different creators against each other. So we automatically tag the content creators as they go live in the ads, and then you can compare on any trait that you care about, whether that's like the leads that were gained, whether that's the impressions, whether that's the CPM, whatever it may be, you can compare on an individual trait level. So a really powerful way to either inform decisions about what to make next, not only from an advertising perspective, but also like what products are doing well, which creators could we double down on our partnership with? Because you have this really granular view inside your ad account of what is actually driving performance for the business. So we see this to be like a really exciting part of how marketing teams can evolve, in the sense that you have now this amazing view. If you can build this feedback loop and you can build this muscle for driving like thousands or hundreds of pieces of content out, you really can test and learn in a way that just hasn't been possible. A good example here is we're looking at the athletic greens reference inside MagicBrief. Another screenshot, and something that we can do now is track the creative testing for a brand over the period of the last 12 months. So we can see here with athletic greens, one of the things that they consistently talk about is the fact that they've consolidated 75 ingredients into one scoop. And throughout all of their messaging and the majority of their advertising, you can see the stuff that really kind of hits home for them is talking about that simplification of a habit, and the fact that you can have 75 ingredients in one. And we even highlight that and pull it out, so you can see a concept that's winning with inside the account is 75 ingredients in one, and the convenience of the intake. If you jump to the next slide, you can see that they're actually graduating this messaging because they know it works on performance channels. They're graduating it into out of home and brand marketing. And this is one of many examples of a digitally native brand that can do this well, where they've got a marketing machine, they test hundreds of concepts every week, and then they graduate the winners into not only more ads on performance channels, but they graduate those to out of home, offline, wherever it may be. So like a fantastic example of a brand that's doing this really well. Something that we released last week, and our amazing engineering team has done an incredible job on this. We now tag hundreds or thousands in some cases of tags for ads that come into the platform. So once you connect your ad account to MagicBrief, we will automatically add tags, whether that's formats, content creators, concepts, things like the underlying desires or drivers, motivations for someone to purchase a product. We've attached all of those as tags. So if you go to the next screen, you'll see here, you can use those tags to build out quick comparisons. So in a matter of seconds, I can see the ads where I'm calling out specific features, but particular formats that are working, different call to actions, ads with subtitles work better, ads with different age groups, different lengths. Like you can really start to see, well, what is driving performance inside the ad account. And this is, as we build out MagicBrief, one of the things that we're most excited about, to give any marketing function the ability to just in a number of clicks see, well, these are the traits that drive performance on our account. So this will be rolling out over the next couple of weeks in the product, but as a really exciting example of how you can build this feedback loop in such a granular way in terms of the insights that you can pull from. Talking about how to integrate brand and performance now, like this is an interesting challenge, and I think the teams that do an amazing job in their marketing function are the ones that can do this well. So creative is really becoming the new targeting. So Facebook have been retiring interest targeting. Now the pure focus on how you get the right message in front of the right person is based on the creative itself. And Meta said last year that 56% of auction outcomes are now driven by the underlying creative asset itself. Here's a really good example, Hexclad first on the left, how they've taken something that works for them and basically gone on this full journey. So they saw that Gordon Ramsay was doing an amazing job in their ads. And you see when you look at MagicBrief, the top performers for Hexclad have Gordon Ramsay in. So they pulled out this insight, they doubled down, they formed a partnership with Gordon Ramsay. He's now invested in the company, and they did a Super Bowl ad together. So they took what was working in performance channels, graduated that to like one of the biggest pieces of brand marketing that you can do in this day and age. It's a Super Bowl ad. But then not only that, they've taken the Super Bowl ad and cut that back into performance advertising by taking a range of Facebook ads that cut from the Super Bowl. So you start to see here, you can do this full feedback loop where you graduate a concept that's working on performance channels, you turn that into a graduated spot for a Super Bowl ad or a TVC out of home, whatever it may be. But then you can use that same kind of credibility from having a celebrity inside the ad, or the fact that it's a very well shot Super Bowl ad in this example. Take that credibility, take that creator, take that celebrity, put them back into the channel where Facebook can hit the right people at the right time, of people that are not only fans of Gordon Ramsay, fans of cooking, like, and hit the right people. And all of a sudden you've got this amazing compounding loop. We obviously couldn't afford to do a Super Bowl ad, but we ran a billboard. I think it cost us about $2,000. So probably one of the cheapest billboard buys in Sydney in the last few months. But then we ran that billboard. And the reason that we ran the billboard wasn't because we thought a ton of people would see it in Surrey Hills, but more so that we could run the picture of that billboard on Facebook. And the amazing thing there is you get to kind of carry the credibility from brand advertising, but you get the reach and the targeting of performance marketing. So another example there of how kind of both of the worlds can blend together in a really meaningful way. You're also starting to see on performance channels something that's really exciting, where as a discovery platform itself, TikTok being an amazing example of this, how TikTok search is up 300%. And you're seeing people use these platforms as a way to discover new products. And I think outside of the larger legacy brands, like those examples that I showed before, whether it's High Smile, Gymshark, Wild, these brands, they're being found on platforms like TikTok or Instagram. And this is kind of becoming the initial driver in their growth, where they're finding the right and relevant audiences off the back of being able to really do well on these channels and find their following and align with them in the work that they can make. So I think you start to see, if you can get this right and you really can blend the two worlds together, your brand marketing can be relevant, and it can be impactful because you've learned from thousands of lessons from the ads that you've run on performance channels. I won't read them all out, but while I was at Eucalyptus, I wrote this list of what I saw to be the 15 elements of a high performance creative team. This is slightly skewed towards performance advertising, but I think so many of the pieces are relevant between brand marketing and performance. That whole piece around having that tight feedback loop between the people who are doing the media buying and the people who are producing the creative, a culture that encourages testing, like so many of these things, whether you are working with an agency partner and you want to have that shared mentality of giving them context on what is truly driving performance in your account, whether you're building a team, whether you're introducing someone to your team, these really are kind of standout principles that we've seen time after time. Like, these are the things that really do drive effective marketing teams. And so many of the features that we've built in MagicBrief within the last 2 years really have almost used this list of a checklist in the sense that we're kind of making these possible as best as we possibly can. So would love feedback on the product, feedback on this presentation, any kind of context that people want to give. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn, or my email is george@magicbrief. But yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope this gave a glimpse on how you can use performance and brand and together in such a beautiful way.
Awesome, George. Thank you. Love the email plug as well. Thanks for that. Cool. We'll bring in Carly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly, as I said, head of growth at Eucalyptus. I think Eucalyptus, we have a house of brands here. And so when I came in as a performance media buyer, we had originally siloed teams of a performance team, a growth team, a brand team, all of that. And over time, what we've really done, and George has alluded to this a little bit, is we've given our teams really full ownership over all channels together, and then kind of the team structure and the support to kind of go after it and grow our brands, whether they view that in a performance channel or a brand channel. And so all of our marketers or creatives have experience working across both brand and performance. And so we have tried a lot over the past few years. We've made some really good decisions, really bad decisions, the whole lot. And so today I'm going to kind of walk through some of the common questions that we get and kind of share what we've learned. So hopefully to give you a little bit of guidance too in both the performance and brand conversation.
Perfect, Carly. We'll start off here. So what do you actually think is the big thing that brands do get wrong when they think about brand and performance?
I think the biggest thing that we've done here is I think we have a knack for overcomplicating things. At the end of the day, brand and performance are just channels. And as a marketer, your job is to really just find attention at the best value. And then you need to make that attention count. So finding the best value is that, that's the media buy, and then making that attention count, that's the creative. And so when we think about value, we're not necessarily saying, the cheapest buy or the most affordable buy, but we also might not be saying the most prestige buy, right? The one that builds the most trust. But it's basically looking at what is the amount that you're spending for the buy, and then thinking about some kind of X factor of attention that you're able to get with that. And so the way that kind of works out over play is I've included this example of a Pilot ad here. And I think Pilot is probably one of the best brands at doing this. And so for those of you who don't know, Pilot is our men's health brand. We offer treatments that are pretty restricted on main channels, particularly in our sexual health products. But the team does a really, really good job at finding a relatively well-valued buy, and then making that attention count. And so this example here is kind of often viewed as, we get a lot of feedback that this is, Pilot's memorable ad or what people really remember about it. But the reality was that this billboard probably ran for like a day. We got it up. They didn't love that, and they pulled it down. But similar to the what George kind of just did with MagicBrief as well, we made a buy that was probably fine in terms of cost, and in terms of attention. It was relatively reasonable, but that X factor that we brought in was the creative and the attention piece of that. Obviously making it timely, making it relevant. And then the fact of taking a picture and having that go through performance channels or organic channels was really that X factor of attention. And that kind of lived far beyond just the buy that ended up lasting a day anyway. And then even continuing the conversation of, well, this ad got taken down anyway. What's the point in that? What does that say about men's health? And all of that has been really both brand building and attention grabbing for Pilot itself. So I think the question isn't brand or performance, and it never should be. I think the questions we need to be asking ourselves is, where is the attention? How can we be there? And then when we're there, how do we show up to make all of that count?
As they said, I remember when Matt Rossi actually shared this on his LinkedIn, and just the noise around it after the day got taken down was far greater than what it had in its moment in time. So with that said, Carly, given what you've just shared, how do you actually go about crafting one unified message across all channels?
Yeah, I think this is the practice that we do really well and quite often at Eucalyptus, of the creative graduation process that George talked about as well. And so that process to us is really, you can use performance channels. They're so cheap and you get such rich data there, and you use that to really try as many creative messages as possible, whether that's the angle you're going for or the creators or colors, anything like that. You can test that ad nauseum, you can get data immediately, and then you can really get confidence to scale that out. And I think why that's important is, my background is performance media. I love Meta. I love that you can go in there and you can push a button, and the next day you will see some kind of metric immediately to that, like that sugar high. That is my bread and butter. And so a few years ago at Eucalyptus, really starting to expand into brand really terrified me, because I knew that that was really important for the growth of our brands, but I knew nothing about that. I had no confidence in what I was putting out there. And so, working with the likes of George to kind of work through what does creative graduation look like helps give me more confidence that if an idea is working in Meta, and it's working, let's try it a different way in, and it's still working, and try it another way and it's still working, you then have the confidence to then say, let's invest more money in creative production for something higher quality, and let's run that on YouTube. Again, another channel with reliable performance metrics that you can start to get more and more confident. And so then if that's working on YouTube, you can take that swing that you can invest in a heavy brand campaign and it will pay off, because this message, this angle has been nailed across multiple channels and your consumers are showing that they're interested in it. So some examples that we have here are really some assets that we've ran for Juniper, our medical weight loss brand, over the past 6 months. So on the right is a screenshot of just a few of hundreds of ads that we ran in Meta, all around this concept of medical weight loss is not cheating. That really came from an insight of people using medical weight loss as kind of an easy way out for weight loss. And that was an opinion, an argument that we could have a really strong argument against. And so we tested many ways in on Meta. We found that this language was really resonating. We graduated that out to a YouTube ad where our incredible motion designer put together a really strong YouTube explainer talking about why it's not cheating and talking about the contradictions that this whole argument has. And that started to perform incredibly well, and we just decided turn that into a TV campaign, and that ran and continued to grow the brand for us. That now, just last week, we've just released our latest white paper PR campaign that's surveying all of Australia on sentiments around medical weight loss and the impact media is having on women in their weight loss journeys. So it's a really great example of how it's not just Meta ads into, TV creative, but you can use this across PR, you can use this across your website, you can use this about organic social. So you just get more confidence through this kind of creative graduation, and you look back and you've got that unified message hitting all of the channels as well.
Nicely said. I like the term as well around that creative graduation. So given Euc's extensive collection of creativity, talk me through a few of those examples across both brand and performance ads.
Yeah, absolutely. I've included some examples from Pilot recently. And so this top one was an ad that we ran during the Olympics with James Magnuson. And so this here, when we're thinking about brand, you've got a different form of attention. Again, like your job across channels is just different bids for attention. And so at the time of watching TV, the attention there is you've got a one-liner to deliver there. You want everyone to walk away with one thing to remember. And so that's what we're looking for here with our TV campaign, is really grabbing that attention at first, and then having that recall in the back of the brain. And then we supplement that with performance ads that leverage that same message. So here our brand campaign was, James Magnuson loves coming second. And in our performance ads below, we're bringing that to life in different ways. So our first example is a UGC ad of showing that again in the same light. We've had statics that are testing around this, and then we ended up even doing a cut down of the news coverage that we got on this TV campaign to really make that, to basically amplify that reach as well. So I think the performance ads are thinking about when someone we're still fighting for that attention in that channel. We're trying to earn the first 3 seconds to the next 5 to the next 10. So the structure of the story is a little bit different, but at the same time, we're still just grabbing attention in that world and then trying to deliver our message. So we continue to iterate that throughout this entire campaign to really help as much recall as possible.
Beautiful. And I want to get into, obviously there's a natural bias here, but around your actual tooling, how are you going about measuring the success of both, and how are you actually embedding that into the org at Euc?
Yeah, great question. I think measurement is really key to obviously what we do every single day. And at Euc, we really boil all of our efforts down into, the single business portfolio. I mean, it's really important to us that we're making sure that everything we invest in drives growth in some way. So I think starting with performance, that's kind of the easiest thing for us to look at, just because, again, you kind of get clearer metrics, at least in terms of, conversions and all of that right off the bat. I think something we've really shifted to over probably the past year or two is measuring performance efficacy in creative, as opposed to just what in platforms are telling us in terms of conversions, because you can't really trust that anymore. And so that's why we really love, tools like MagicBrief are really helpful, because we've actually rallied our team much more around creative efficiency metrics. Success there is scaling dollars into ads that have really strong hook rates, hold rates, CTRs, and even top of funnel conversion to give us a bit of a guide. And then obviously we'll then do kind of that back end triangulation to make sure that as we're scaling dollars into more efficient creative or creative that's resonating better, do we actually see those results coming out in terms of conversion? I think The brand measurement has been trickier, obviously, and something I naturally struggled with a lot, especially coming from a very direct response world. And I think, you know, balancing that short-term and long-term view has been really difficult. But I think the tools obviously that we use here is the way that we use Tracksuit is to really help. I believe it quantifies the unquantifiable for me. Obviously, we have a little bit of tactics for understanding direct response conversion, but I think what has been really helpful with Tracksuit has been able to understand how those awareness and sentiment it kind of changes over time, right? So the screenshot that we have here is something that we're looking at for Juniper. So over the past 6 months, we have been working really hard at kind of growing the overall demand for medical weight loss and really kind of bringing that attention in. And so while we may be looking at a few tactics to see our TV ads, our out-of-home driving response, really understanding is awareness growing month over month has been really crucial for us in understanding where are we driving success. You know, it may not be direct now, but it may be coming through in the coming months. And I think seeing that number continue to go up has been really important. I think the most important thing that we have done at Eucalyptus is we implemented a pre-purchase survey for our brands. And so that really helps us get a better understanding of who's coming through the door. So basically asks just like, how did you hear about us, with a series of options. And obviously it's not perfect data. You're going to rely on a consumer to self-select. But using that has been really helpful, particularly in understanding brand impact. So it's really a tool that's given, you know, our brand marketers and our analysts kind of a view of if people are coming through and they heard about us from TV or radio or out of home, it allows us to at least pair that with a spend metric to say, okay, this is, you know, some kind of efficiency in terms of a performance channel, or we can start to look at conversion or LTV by these referral channels. So I think that has been really huge, and that's how we really shape our understanding of brand versus performance activity as well. So if you're able to implement that, I would highly recommend, because then you can triangulate that referral data with, you know, things like Tracksuit or MagicBrief and GA4 first party data, and then you can get some form in that nebulous triangle square moment to understand really what's working and go from there.
As I said, I think in your context as well, particularly in the conversation of sexual health and that as a category, being able to see how the category changes and the brand is a really important metric to understand. I think that flows beautifully into this next conversation, and probably something that all of us marketers have come up against. But how do you actually allocate the split in budget between both? Do you even think of it in that way?
Great question. I think we kind of have a standard split, I guess, like media mix split, but I think at Uke, we allocate capital really, really quickly. And that's kind of the central to what we do. We kind of give everyone who touches a media dollar, whether you are kind of, you know, my role, a commercial lead, a growth marketer, brand marketer, we are responsible for the entire pool of budget that we have to grow the business. And so we are talking about where that money is going and its efficiency religiously. So we have monthly plans, right? Each month we'll kind of look at our media mix and we'll say, okay, you know, we want to shift maybe a little bit more into brand, or we think that YouTube could do a little bit more for us. So let's try that this month. And we'll kind of set goals, but really we think the secret to success here is making sure that you are pivoting as quickly as possible. So we really do like a weekly review where everyone gets in a room and we look at all of our performance for our brands week over week. And we'll say, where did we spend? Where did we not spend? Did we see incrementality? Did we not? Is a brand buy working based on the referral data that we're getting? If so, should we put more money in there? And if so, where are we pulling from? So it's really a constant dance, but I think it's really important because so many times I'm setting plans at the beginning of the month or even, you know, the quarter. And if I'm just sticking to that plan, I'm going to miss out on so much opportunity, because I could launch a piece of creative in YouTube that's suddenly doing really well, and I want to put more money behind that. I need that flexibility. And so having that constant conversation over what's working, what's not working, making sure you have a team that understands that that's the goal. We have a shared vision of growing this business. No one's precious about where it is going. And so making sure that we're kind of saving that, you know, conversation and having that frequently. And we know what data points we're looking at to decide where to put more money. And I think the final thing that was really important and that's been helpful for us is when we're going through, at least in that budget planning or that capital allocation planning, we basically always try to reserve each month some pool of money that we feel can go towards a buy or two that has no strings attached. So that gives you room to test completely new channels or test a creative or a brand campaign that it can flop, and that's fine, but you're never going to get anywhere by doing the same thing. So we basically reserve some money for that testing pool that can go to performance channels or brand channels or whatever it is. But that's really important so that our media mix continues to evolve over time, and we're not just stuck doing the same thing, but we're continuing to try new channels or implement new tactics as well.
I like that. I think that comes through really clearly as well in terms of the talent and their bias towards a culture of experimentation. So nicely done. And I think that, again, leads beautifully to this conversation. As marketing leaders, we probably spend 50% of our time thinking, dreaming about marketing org design. So when you think about both of these elements, how are you actually designing a marketing team that can do both? Who's on the team?
Great question. Again, I kind of talked about this earlier. We used to, probably about 3 years ago, we had a brand team and a performance team and all of that. And what we realized is we were working in such silos and we weren't working well together. And our brands were growing, but it wasn't doing enough. And so we made the decision to basically give each brand a full stack team. So the way that that kind of works is, Juniper would have a growth lead or creative lead, and then we have, a growth marketer, and then we have a stack of creatives and a producer. And that's essentially it. And this team was responsible for, here's your, your chunk of budget. Here is your targets for how we want to kind of grow the brand or grow the business. And that's up to this team to allocate. And so I think looking back to a lot of that, the biggest and the best decision that I think you can make in forming a marketing function is to hire for storytellers, like first and foremost. I think storytellers come in all forms. I think it's really easy to just say, that's our copywriter's job. That's their responsibility. Actually, I think you can see teams really thrive when you start to hire storytellers who are producers and growth marketers and videographers and motion designers. I think it has been so wonderful to see these full function teams come together, and you can have a motion designer or videographer say, I've got this great idea for an asset. I'm going to go make it and kind of build it out. I can use first principles to understand where it comes from, and they can work with the creative lead or growth marketer, kind of get it into shape as needed. But if it all relies on one person driving the story home, you're not going to grow the brand at the speed that you need, because you need so many different, diverse perspectives. And so I think my tip would definitely be hire for storytellers and build a team that has the culture where everyone's voice kind of comes in. It's a pretty flat ownership. And then in terms of actual structural tactics, what we really think about is kind of a bit of a triangle of ownership. We basically have, you want an allocator of capital, someone who's able to make the decisions on where the money needs to go, which channels we need to look at. You've got an allocator of ideas. So how do we want to bring that to life creatively? How do you want that to shine? And then an allocator of time. When you balance brand and performance in one team, it is really hard, and it's going to take a lot of team time. TVCs take weeks and months to make. A Facebook ad could take 30 minutes, depending on if it's like whatever it may be. You could have your whole team wiped out on a TVC for a few weeks, and you don't get the performance creative velocity that you need. So an allocator of time, an allocator of resources is a super key hire to make sure that's kind of bringing that to life. So we kind of have our team responsible for everything from TVs to meta ads. And we found that to be really successful and also really empowering for the team members to be able to learn whole varieties of different kinds of creative types. We have a digital designer who is an incredible web designer, and yet over time she's made out of home ads and print ads and static ads and whatever that may be. So it's been really exciting for our team members, and we found this structure to be really helpful for kind of growing those brands over time.
I think that sort of addresses that tension as well between performance only being rational and then brand only being emotional, being able to have storytellers across all. So makes a ton of sense. We're going to open up the floor, everybody. Thank you so much, Carly. That was incredible. Stay around. I'm assuming a bunch of these questions will be for you. So if everybody just wants to throw them in, and we can run through as many as we can in the next 9 minutes. I'm going to start. Question from Benjamin, one for you, Carly. When you're thinking of the effectiveness of a referral channel via survey as a proxy for their ability to drive mental availability, or do you think about it differently?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think like if someone's coming in through TV, then they are remembering TV, and that kind of shows that that's coming through. I think something that you also have to remember of the fallacy of that, it's likely underreporting the impact of brand channels. So we see people coming through during a TV campaign, there will be a sudden spike in people who say they heard about us from Meta or from Instagram or whatever that may be, though there's no changes in those platforms. So you have to know that it is largely a halo effect where maybe they learned about us from Meta or Instagram, and that has really stayed in their brain. Like that's, the brand that I saw on Instagram. But I think the TV campaign was what kind of pushed them over the edge. So you kind of have to have the balance of the two as well, and understanding it is mental availability. It's not this direct thing drove an action. And so that's also something we balance as well.
Makes a ton of sense. And I've got another here. Sorry, guys, there's so many questions in the chat. I'm finding it a little hard to find them all. But I've got one from Matt around, would love to know your point of view on the right short-term metric to use for measuring and optimizing brand creative. If you want to take that one, Carly, and I can add my 2 cents after that.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're thinking from a conversion standpoint, which is kind of what we'll look at, I think the key metrics that we look at would be our top of funnel growth by these referral channels, or traffic to our site. We look at by direct traffic, brand searches, things like that. Those are the key metrics that we will look at. And then obviously what I use in Tracksuit a lot would be basically just comparing the awareness and consideration, particularly against our competitors, to understand, is the general market moving, or are we moving at a faster pace in the market? And if so, that's how we're succeeding. So those are the key metrics I look at. Mickey might have a few more.
So just to go deeper on that one, Carly, before I share my view, are you looking at your ability to convert down the funnel from awareness to consideration and then preference to the usage to be able to assess that?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I think from my point of view is that brand building creative shouldn't just be judged by immediate sales alone. It can't be done just in isolation when we're trying to drive that, but it doesn't mean that it can't be measured in the short term. I think like the short-term metric that I'd advocate for is anything around short-term lift or uplift in mental availability, which sort of backs up your point, Carly. And that can be captured by brand recall, brand consideration, salience metrics. And I think a lot of that is a really strong leading indicator of long-term brand health. Let me jump in here. George, if you want to pop in and share anything on that as well, feel free to while I run through these. So many great questions. Sorry, you go, George.
I was going to say, I might answer Michael's question,
Please.
who's interested in the perspective of the future of AI's role in scaling performance marketing and the role or balance of a human creative input in a world where AI is the engine. This is super interesting and something that we've thought a lot about recently in terms of how the workflow works in an environment where the cost of creative production is just getting lower and lower with the developments in AI. Even last week, OpenAI's new image model and the kind of outputs that you're seeing from that already. And something that we feel strongly about is being able to, in a world where the cost of production is getting closer to free, deciding what to make is the most important thing you can do. So not only has that been kind of a big part of how we thought about the roadmap and the kind of greater vision for MagicBrief, but also the way that we think about humans being involved in the process. And I think it's in our nature as humans to always want to feel like we can have our hand on the steering wheel, in the sense that we want to be involved in the process. And I don't think we should get to the stage where the whole thing happens as in this kind of black box, one shot, like the output just appears and that's it. Not only because that's not a way of working where you're going to end up with the best results, but you also remove the ability to have kind of human impact or the impact of a creative person that they could have made on that process, and kind of carrying it through the steps, seeing it develop from kind of like an early idea or an insight, taking it into a brief, shaping it in like a piece of video, and putting the craft into it as well. So I think there's like the people who are really going to do well off the back of this are teams that work out how to kind of scale the engine and the production off the back of the advancements with the new models and the things that you can generate and the ways that you can work in that sense. But they also have that process that works in a way where they can have real human intervention from creative people in their team that really can impact the work. So I think like that is going to be the piece to get right. Like, how do you get that balance where people really can impact the work, but at the same time, you can scale the output and get to kind of like small teams can make things that they never would have had the production budgets to make if it wasn't for AI. And like, how do you kind of get that world right and have the amazing technology work with these amazing teams and that blend?
As you said, George, I want to bring in Chris's question from earlier. Maybe everybody has a perspective here. which isn't the danger that you end up chasing an optimization inside the current demand group, which doesn't actually achieve brand goals when delivered to a future demand group? I'll tackle this one first. Chris, great question. I don't think it is a case of or when it comes to brand and performance. It is an and that's very much what we're trying to share throughout this conversation, that they are multipliers. I highly recommend reading the TikTok report that we built with the group, because I think we can see that brand health is highly correlated with performance marketing outcomes. So for examples, we did find that brands with high awareness, over 60% brand awareness, were experiencing almost 3 times more efficient conversion through their TikTok performance advertising, again, showing how those two work in union. And I think, again, for all companies of all stages, they should be investing in both building future demand and improving the efficiency of harvesting that existing. So again, it's coming back to doing and as opposed to any framing of or. We had a question here around YouTube. I actually really like this one. We've probably got 2 more minutes that we'll run through as many of these as we can. I had a question here. There it is, share. Around, is it, this one's from Chris. So which placements are you seeing as best for brand building for non-Super Bowl size businesses, CTV, YouTube, etc.?
We're personally seeing a lot of success on BVOD at the moment, is what we have been working through a lot. And then YouTube as well are kind of our key bread and butters. We're still trying to expand a little bit more outside of just BVOD because we've been playing a lot in there in the past year or so. But that for us has been really, really reliable in terms of both building the brand, building awareness, but also we're seeing that people coming through in that channel are converting at a rate that is really successful for our business.
George, did you have anything to add to that? No, we'll jump to the next one from Matt. Sweet as. So is there any channel really a performance channel? Can't any channel do both brand and performance? Yeah, great question. One for you, Carly.
Sorry, I was just catching up on the chat to see BVOD was about to reply. Can you repeat that question?
Of course. So is any channel really a performance channel? Can't any channel do both brand and performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're just thinking about the attention that someone has on something at a given point in time, whether they are scrolling on their phones and therefore on Meta or TikTok or whatever, or they are consuming something in media or watching something on TV. I think we code things as a brand channel or performance channel, but it's just a channel. It's just a bid for attention. It's all about the creative and the message you put there.
Yeah, nicely said. I think as well, like to the conversations we've had during this Q&A, like we need to remember that there is so much more than just advertising when we think about brand. Like it's a very linear module of thinking about it. There's often so many other, go back to your uni days around your 3 Ps, 4 Ps, 7 Ps, whatever they are, that actually create the cumulative effect of what a brand is. 7:59 team, we are right on the dot. All of the other questions, there's so many incredible ones in there. We'll pull all of them out. We'll spend time digesting them and answering them, and then we'll send that out with the slide deck as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Carly and George. It was a pleasure to hang out with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Thank you, everyone.
Catch you guys soon. Thank you. See you later.